guest of Anthony Bourdain and designer Kate Spade. A lot of people trying to understand the tragedy of suicide, some stereotypes, and myths about mental illness may actually prevent people from seeking help.
And joining us is someone who is surviving mental illness and encouraging a better understanding of those struggling with suicidal thoughts, writer and mental health advocate Robert David Jaffee. Thank you so much for being here. A lot of people were really affected and impacted by this and searching for more information. We've seen a lot of people getting online and just trying to understand, how does this happen? So what do you think are some of the misconceptions out there about suicide?
I think probably the biggest one is that it's, unfortunately, people view it as romantic. And there are so many people who've committed suicide, for instance, jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
Almost an aesthetic experience they want to think. And I want people to realize that there was a study done by Cal Berkeley in the 1970s that indicated that the people who had survived their attempts at jumping off the bridge, and there were many who actually had survived, 90% of them were alive about 20 years later. And every single one of those people, as I recall from reading an article in the New Yorker, had said they regretted it as soon as they jumped. Oh. So it's, if people think it's romantic, it's not romantic. There's nothing romantic about suicide. And nor is there anything remotely aesthetic about it, and yet people seem to think there is. So that's the biggest misconception. I want to make people realize, don't think it's going to be a sublime experience, because it's not.
What do you think about both of the tragedies this week being parents?
You know, that's a very good question, Chris. And my grandfather committed suicide at a time when he had my father and my father's two siblings. And I guess I would go back to that study again with the Cal Berkeley study, that I think people need to realize that there unfortunately are repercussions. If you do have children, there are even more repercussions.
Absolutely.
And it can have a ripple effect through the generations. I've seen in my own family, my grandfather's suicide deeply impacted my father, whom I love. And that affected his parenting of me. Thankfully, I'm alive, and my father, as I indicated in an article, in a sense, even saved my life in 1997. But I think that people have to realize, unfortunately, there really are repercussions for a suicide. It does not happen in a vacuum.
Can you talk about the fact that when you look at Kate Spade, Robin Williams years ago, and now Anthony Bourdain, a lot of people will say, "Oh my gosh, they're so successful. They're you know, at the epitome of their career. They're doing so great. They're role models. What do they have to be depressed about?" And that's such a narrow view, because we don't know the burdens that people carry.
You're absolutely right. It's paradoxical, and a lot of times some of the most miserable people, some of the most deeply depressed people have a lot of money. And are even very successful. I think of Hamlet, whom I cited in an article recently, who a lot of people don't understand. They think he's simply some coward who delays all the time in doing something. He actually can be quite courageous and impulsive. He's just an example of a paradoxical person who himself is suicidal. I don't think that having money inoculates you remotely, or having success remotely inoculates you from suicide. I think we need to form more connectedness with people. We need to reach out to people more. And in a sense, if we feel that people sometimes have to read your mind, though, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
My father, fortunately, read my mind, in a sense, in 1997 when I was very ill.
And knew that you needed help.
And my mother, I had phoned her originally, and then I had been hospitalized at USC. And then when I got out of the psychiatric ward about a week later, my father was the one who sensed something was wrong when we were in the hotel room, and he was correct to sense it, because I was thinking horribly of jumping out of the window.
If you're interested in more information and help, of course it is absolutely available. If you or a loved one are struggling, you need to know how to approach the conversation or to start a conversation, you can get help 24 hours a day. There's some incredible people that staff this. 800-273-TALK, 800-273-TALK, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org.
You can also read more about Robert's story at robertdavidjaffee.com. Thank you so much for talking with us about this. We appreciate your openness as well.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.